hints and tips for a stress-free migration. And I'm delighted to have a co-presenter of Michael Ferrante from Oracle. Michael has been in Oracle for many years. Unfortunately, in my time at Oracle, I didn't meet him, but I have since met him, and he's a great, very, very knowledgeable guy. So we're certainly very pleased to have him on the call today. So I'm going to quickly run through what we're going to be going through today. Get to the next slide. So we've got an introduction and why our upgrade. Michael has been giving an excellent presentation around the world recently, so I've asked him to do a sort of summary of that for about 15-20 minutes. Then I'm going to go into some detail on our upgrade of Pitstop.com. Now, Pitstop.com is a forms application. It's a forms application that we sell, and it's a forms application that assists customers to migrate and modernize their forms applications. And then we'll have a question and answer session. So if you've got anything you want to ask about, just click on the question mark. You can feed your question into the system. One of my colleagues from Pits will keep track of that, and if we've got time at the end, we'll go through those, particularly as we've got some real experts on the line. If not, we'll save them up and make sure we send out an email with these solutions to your questions. So a little bit about Pits, who we are. As I said, I'm based out of London, but I know we've got a worldwide audience today, which is fantastic. Based out of 4 locations, companies based out of Stuttgart in Germany. We've got a location in Troy in the US. We've got locations in South America, and as I said, now in London. Company's been going for 16 years, lots and lots of forms experience there. 80 colleagues around the world, many, many customers, and we only do Oracle. We're Oracle through and through. So cut many of us in 2, and you'll see Oracle stamped through us. And we have one product. Yes, we do services and training, but our core item is a tool called Pitstop.com, and going back to my previous life, I like to refer to this as a repository-driven development environment. You're loading all your forms into the repository in which you can then manipulate them. So back many years ago, and I won't harp on about the old days because we're looking to do modernization, but my first upgrade of forms was from 2 to 2.3, and somebody from Oracle had decided that the upgrade required each of the triggers to need an extra little bit of code. A hash exe macro no fail semicolon statement was required. So we had about 500 or 600 forms in a little application I was maintaining. And to do that manually would have taken a long time. So we loaded the forms into a table structure and did an update statement on them. And that many, many months of work came down to several hours' work. And that's the basis of what fits behind Pits.com. Lots more details on that as we go through the presentation. One thing I would say is that many, many people have said, forms, Oracle Forms, it's a dead product, don't want to get involved in that. We really are proving this wrong. Several of the shows we've been to recently, conferences, we see a huge interest in Oracle Forms. And the countries you see on the screen at the moment are all represented as attendees at on this webinar. So there's forms being run absolutely right around the world, and I'm sure Michael will reiterate this, that sure he gets invites from many of these countries. So you're not alone if you're using Oracle Forms. There's many, many people out there doing it. A very, very quick poll. One of my colleagues, if you could put up the poll on the screen, we'll see if that works. I want to know which version of Forms you're running. Not necessarily what forms you've had experience of, but if you're now running Forms 4.5 and 9, can you just click the boxes there, check them out. It'll give us all a feel for where everyone is. And I like to feed this back to Oracle so they've got a feeling of where customers are in the journey to 12c. How are we doing on feedback there? Looks to me as though just over 90% are on either Forms 10G or 11G. So we're seeing good progress. People are keeping up to date. Obviously, we've got a few people, we've certainly got people on Forms 2.3 or 3, quite a large number on Form 6, which is quite interesting. So what we want to do today is go through the advantages and why you should be upgrading now. 12C's good, solid product out there. We've upgraded, and I'll go into some details about our findings a little later. But so thank you for your feedback there. Yeah, sort of 90% on Forms 10 or 11, 5% on 9i, 12% on 6. So interesting numbers there. Thank you. So moving on to Michael. Now, Michael's part of Oracle. He's residing out of Florida, out of Orlando, I believe, although Michael might correct me. I'm sure he told me at some time, but I'm going to hand over to Michael now. So let me just change presenter over to the other side of the ocean. There we go, Michael. You have control.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Awesome.
I've got the Oracle screen at the moment. There we are. We've got Oracle Forms 12C, the beginning of a new day.
Awesome. So let me start by first thanking the entire PITS team for even inviting me to participate in this session. I'm trying to do my best to be as visible and as available around the world as I can, knowing that, as you mentioned, we have a lot of users still on older versions. I'm sure my attention and input hopefully will be helpful to everybody, so I want to make sure I'm available wherever I can be. As mentioned, I've been with Oracle for a long time. I actually started in 1999, right before the world came to an end, before Y2K, so that was kind of a fun experience. At that time, I was hired in with the Forms support team, and I spent about 13, almost 14 years with them on the support team for Forms. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I was honored with the role of becoming the Forms product manager. So from an Oracle point of view, I've been with the Forms product for quite a long time, and it certainly is a family member to me now, so be nice to it, and no one will get offended. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of rally through a discussion, as mentioned, regarding upgrading. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on new features because this is a session about upgrading and what the whole point of upgrading really is, and how difficult or easy that process can be. However, as part of a requirement for me to do any of my sessions representing Oracle, I am required to share this safe harbor statement, which I would ask that you kind of skim through. In short, it basically says that the information I'm sharing is really for informational purposes. Some of it is subject to change if it hasn't already been committed to. So please don't go back and tell your account manager Mike said so. Okay. So let's take a quick look at what I'm gonna go through before turning it back over to Pitts. I want to share some of the support dates with you guys. As I'm now hearing, a lot of you are running older versions. You probably need to be aware of what your entitlements are for support. Briefly hit some of the highlighted or high-level bullet points as to why upgrading seems to be the right thing to do. Take a look at what exactly you need to do to get from version A to version B. And then briefly look at, again, just a very small number of the new features that are available, and then we could either have questions and answers at this point or wait until we get to the very end when the PITS team completes the session. So let's take a look at the lifetime support policy that Oracle publishes publicly. I've actually trimmed this down. This is a screenshot from the actual lifetime support policy that's available to everybody in the world that has internet access. Here I'm only presenting version 11 of Forms or Fusion Middleware onto the newer versions. I've excluded the older versions because the older versions have been long since de-supported many, many years ago, so it really added no value to show them here. You can see release 1, the very first line there, has already reached its end of life for Premier support, although extended support is still available for it. And then if you jump all the way down to version 12, which we just released in October, you can see that support for it is planned until late 2020 with extended support into 2023. That in and of itself seems to be a pretty good reason to come forward, right? Supportability definitely is important, at least for most organizations. So why do you want to upgrade? I probably shouldn't have shown all the bullets all at once, but I'm going to rapid fire through them because I hope a lot of these reasons are obvious to everyone, but if not, maybe it'll make you raise an eyebrow and think about it. With so many new platforms coming out all the time, whether it's Windows 10 or Oracle Enterprise Linux 7 or new Solaris versions or HP versions or whatever platform your organization uses, there's always a need to get to a new operating system. If you're expecting to have software install onto that operating system, you can't exactly expect old software to install on new operating systems. It's not intended to do that. If you manage to get it to work, then you're kind of on your own to do that. So if new platforms are needed, definitely upgrading is a must. Of course, with every new version comes new features and enhancements to existing features. Performance and scalability always tend to be on the list of important topics internally when we look at developing new products. We always want to ensure that at bare minimum the performance remains the same, but more often than not we look at ways to improve the performance, which in the case of version 12 is true. We actually did a pretty good job of performance improvements. From the form side of the house, we always want to look at things like integration with other products. I mean, we are a company that sells hundreds and hundreds of products. We want to come up with ways in which you could intertwine those products and use them kind of together as a family. So each new version, we try to come up with better ways to do integration with other products and technologies, as we did in version 12. And as I mentioned, ensure the compatibility with newer Oracle products. More of what I'm referring to there, more like platform certification, is certification with things like the database. If you have interest in using the version 12 database, for example, you certainly are not going to be able to do that if you're using Form 6. So upgrading is definitely going to be a must in that scenario. Security, just like performance and scalability, is top of the list. However, security is priority 1 for us. That most often becomes the #1 thing we are looking at with every release. We want to make sure that existing security is maintained, but by the same token, we always look for better ways to improve security features. And this is going to be a topic I'm going to mention a little further, the idea of upgrading to the next version. For those of you on version 6, although getting to 12 is moderately easy, getting to version 12 from version 10 or 11 is simple. So the closer you are to the latest version, the easier it will be to upgrade. And of course, as I started off the discussion, by upgrading today, obviously you're able to maintain support if it should be needed. Now, when I say support, I'm not only referring to the need for technical assistance from our technical support folks, but I'm referring to things like obtaining patch sets, critical patch updates, or anything else along those lines, updated documentation. So support doesn't necessarily mean the idea of contacting support. It also refers to the idea of you actually getting your hands on updated software like patches. So that's important to understand as well. So what do we really need to do to get from version A to version B? Well, again, I mentioned that the actual steps or effort involved will depend on where you're starting from, but at a high level, these are this is kind of an overview of what you want to do to get the project started. The first thing you're going to want to do is take a look at the documentation we've provided. For each version now, starting from about version 9.04, I believe, we offered this upgrade guide. For version 12, we've updated it so that it's applicable to version 12. And it starts off looking back at version 6 or 6i, 608. Having said that, the contents of the document actually applies to really any version. You really should review this document no matter what version you're starting with and going to. The document talks about features that have been obsoleted. It talks about recommendations on getting from old client-server applications to web-deployed applications, things you should look out for, and other types of technical information that may impact your application as you go forward. Once you've reviewed that document, the next thing you want to do is, based on some of that information, you want to remove or correct obsolete application code. This is going to be most applicable to applications that were developed before version 10. In a few minutes, the PITS team is going to offer you a couple ways in which you could accomplish that in a rather simple way using their tool. The next thing you want to do before you start doing any software installation is take a look at the product certification guides or matrix. Make sure that the platform you're installing on is appropriate for the software you're installing onto it. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't want to try to install, for example, Forms 12 on Windows 2000. That certainly is not an appropriate thing to do and likely will cause all kinds of grief. Similar to the software, we want to make sure that the hardware you're installing the software on is appropriate. Same kind of a concept. You definitely don't want an old single CPU machine that has 512 meg of RAM on it to attempt to receive something like a Weblogic server installation. That's not going to work. And then once you've done all your research, the next thing obviously to do is download, install, and configure the new software. To be quite honest with you, I've probably already spent more time talking about this whole process than it would be to actually do it. So it's fortunately the installation process is pretty easy. Once you've got the software installed and configured and you've done some basic sanity testing, the next thing you want to do is take your application, move it over to the desired place on this new installation, and using the new version of the form compiler, generate your new executables. As I mentioned, if you're starting from version 10, this should be a pretty straightforward process. There should be very limited pain, if any at all. It should be mostly seamless. And then, of course, for those of you that are familiar with the actual deployment of the application, you'll ensure that form's path is set to find that application that you just generated, and off you go, open a browser, and you should hit the ground running. So again, it probably took me longer to explain all that than it would to actually do it. We're pretty happy with the process. It's pretty straightforward. It is a definite top-down type of a process. If you follow all the steps, it should work every time. The key, of course, is doing your preliminary investigation and review, like we've mentioned here. I will say that just simply downloading the software and attempting to install it without reviewing the documentation is probably a mistake. You put yourself at risk of having problems and getting frustrated, and the best way to avoid that is to just take a few minutes and review some of the documentation. Okay, so you've done this upgrade. You've got your basic sanity testing done. What in the world do you do? At this point, since you're already kind of in that mode, it's probably a good time to take a look at your application code, do a little bit of a deep dive into it. Again, this is where PITS becomes really powerful because, again, their tool is designed to do this kind of thing, a deep code analysis. Do I have old code that's never used? Do I have repetitive code? Do I have code that's not even applicable to run in a web environment? That type of effort will definitely improve your experience, both upgrading, but also on the other side of it, the user experience. If the application code is cleaned up, likely it's going to perform better and obviously be more maintainable going forward. Once you've done a little bit of a code review and cleanup, this is probably also a good time to look at doing enhancements to your own application. Have end users been complaining about a particular bad behavior in your application for a long time? Maybe a button is located in a less than desired location, or when they click on a button, they have to also, click on 4 other buttons to solve a problem or complete a task. Look at doing some improvements to your own application at this time. Once we've done all that, now's a good time to start thinking about the new features of this version that you've spent all this effort upgrading to. Simply upgrading to a new version for the sake of upgrading, to be quite honest, is pointless. One of the reasons you upgrade to a new version, I hope, is to take advantage of the new features it delivers. Simply revving the version number gains you very little unless you take advantage of what the new version delivers. So take a look at the documentation, look at what new features are offered, and consider using them in your own application. I will tell you that in this version, this new version 12, we've released probably more than 10 times the number of new features than we've released in the previous version. So it is pretty likely that you'll find at least a few new features that will be desirable for your application. On the screen here on the bottom, I have just a few screenshots of some of the feature changes we delivered. On the left, and again, I won't go through these in great detail, but just to give you an idea of what we did deliver, the left, that little rainbow pie there is just an indication that we've now offered the ability to offer custom color schemes. The little speaker there, we've now delivered the support for audio, playing audio files. You can see by that top center image, we now support images and tab labels on tab canvases, customizations to log on and password change dialog boxes, the use of WebUtil without a dependency on the third-party Jacob libraries if you're not using Olay functionality, integration with BI Publisher, system alert, system events, and just many, 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 many more. So lots of new features in the new version. To give you an idea of how the new features rolled out version to version, so depending upon what version you're on, this may or may not offer a whole lot of value, this slide. But if you're on versions older than 10, consider that all of the features are cumulative. So all of the new features that in the versions in front of you, you consume. So whether they're infrastructure features, administrative features, diagnostic features, enhancements to the user interface, the user experience, performance, and on and on and on. There are lots and lots of new features. What we have here are kind of high-level features. For those of you that have seen my sessions before, I use this particular slide all the time because I think it's a really good representation of the ongoing growth to the product. It was mentioned earlier that there was some belief that the Forms product, was kind of stagnant. This should hopefully be an indication that it's not. You could see as we went from version 10 to version 12, the list gets longer and longer. In this particular case, I couldn't even, it would take me 4 slides, 5 slides, 10 slides to list all the new features that we delivered in version 12. So we've done a lot of work, and the amount of work we're doing continues to increase. So lots of new features. Okay. So with that, I'd like to introduce version 12. Lots of cool stuff. Again, there's over 50 new features and enhancements. It would be very difficult to even identify all of them. Some of them are very subtle, some of them are very complex. How you define a new feature, a new enhancement may differ, but generally speaking, the bottom line is we did a lot of work with version 12 and plan to continue doing so going forward. Again, here's kind of a high-level look at some of the features we delivered. Again, very small list compared to what actually is there. Obviously, we don't want to spend too much time going through all of them. Things like BI Publisher, support for Java Web Start, standalone deployment. So if you don't want to use a web browser anymore, you could avoid doing that. For those of you that use Chrome, Google Chrome, and you've gotten aggravated over the idea that they no longer support plugins, so be it. Don't use Chrome anymore. You don't have to use a browser at all if you don't want to. Again, customizable color schemes, system events like monitoring of client idle time, database idle time, sending messages from Fusion middleware control to your running applications, enhancements to the record manager to improve record set data handling performance, improvements to the Java API, and the list goes on and on and on of all the new features that we deliver. To give you an idea of some of the little lower level kind of things we delivered on, we added a bunch of new applet parameters, hopefully to make your life a little bit easier so that you could enhance the usability, the look and feel of your application without actually having to change any application code. We added a whole bunch of new properties so that at design time you could leverage functionality that was otherwise not easily done or not doable at all. And numerous new environment variables to do similar to like applet parameters where you could change application behavior without actually having to change application code. Again, this is not an all-inclusive list. There are many more than what I have listed here. This is just a condensed summary look at some of the changes that we made. Okay. And certainly last but not least for me, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of the contact information for me. There are forums out on the public sites, the OTN forums. There's also a similar forum in the MyOracle support area, and you could also get in touch with me through Twitter. And for those of you that are probably going to comment on it, on the top right-hand corner, you could see a logo for Oracle Partner Oraplayer. That actually was an accident on my part. I did a session with them yesterday talking about new features. So it is not uncommon for me to work regularly with all of the Oracle partners to ensure that you guys, the forums users, are aware of the latest and greatest. So we all are working very closely together to make sure that you have the latest information and the tools available you need to get to the latest versions and ensure that your applications live for another few decades, because we know this is a pretty big investment for most organizations. Okay. David, do we want to take questions now, or we want to wait?
We're going to hold them until the end, but thank you very much, Michael. Each time I see this, the deck, and I've been working with 12C for 2 or 3 months now, I spot something new that I'd like to investigate. And I think that record manager stuff looks interesting, and perhaps hand in hand with performance improvements, I'm sure we can get some statistics out of there to prove that things are certainly working a lot more quickly. But let's hold that for another day. But I'm going to grab back the presentation here and show my screen. But thank you very much for that, Michael. We'll come back to you with some questions at the end, I'm sure. So folks, don't hold back. It's not often we can manage to get Michael around. He does do a huge amount for the user community, so it's an honour to have him available for the moment. So the next section is to talk about our upgrade of our Forms product. And I want to get in a little more detail about the real things that we found out, as we went along. Yes, lots of new features to take advantage of. We've taken advantage of some of them, but in general we were upgrading our tool to work on the brand new platform. So let's run through some of these. There we go. Okay, now this goes back to my days of pretty much running a chunk of Oracle support, as Michael has done. Whenever you're doing a software upgrade, just assume that, despite Michael's optimism there, that if you don't read and don't follow the instructions to the letter, things will go wrong, and you'll end up phoning somebody who will then go, well, did you read what was in that manual, in a polite way? So my short hints and tips here I'll run through. Back up what you've got and test that backup. I'm hoping I'm not teaching people to suck eggs, if that translates. Tell people what you're going to be doing. Don't start doing that upgrade of the accountancy system at the end of the year. You're probably going to upset somebody. Print, read the instructions, meet the requirements exactly. Then what I always do is print out the document. Now, one of my colleagues in the US, Pitts Americas, he has done a fantastic guide to moving to 12C, and I think there's 105 pages. I printed it out and I tick these things off as we go through. Run it through a quick test. Then what I like to do is reproduce it, because then I really do ensure that I understand the upgrade process. Test it, sign it off, and lo and behold, we're in production. So a few very basic things for you, but hopefully it's a good checklist for folk. Looking at the certification matrix. Now, whatever you do, don't print this slide out and use it as the de facto, or David or Michael said, this is what's going to be supported. Go on to OTN, have a look at the latest matrix of certification. These things do change over time, but they need to, as the hardware vendors, the operating system vendors change things. Oracle has to change things along the way, and we find we do have to change things as well. So just go through this and tick off. So currently, databases supported here are 11 and 12. JDK. JDK is probably the one that keeps moving more than anything. And something that Michael said reminded me of the fact that Forms is an amazing tool in the fact that it really is cross-platform. You can be developing in one environment and just deploy on another. Yeah, I know you can do that in Java, but it wasn't a common thing many years ago that you could do this sort of thing, but it was good to have a reminder there. So that's the platform requirements. Michael spoke about the deployment options, and we've certainly investigated these. 4 of them come out of the box. This Java Network Launch Protocol, the support of the NPAPI, as I would call it, embedded within Google and soon to be pulled out of things like Firefox. The support for plugins is gradually being removed from web browsers. Now that causes a problem if you're using Java plugins within your browsers, not less from security reasons. Why are these things being removed? Well, there's a couple of good reasons. Everyone's moving mobile, and these plugins will not work on many of the mobile devices, and there are security questions around them. So it is now time to seriously consider what you're doing with plugins on browsers. And we've certainly investigated the other ways of running these forms. Something we discovered as we were going through and setting up our Pitstop.com within the Forms 12c environment, we hit upon an error. Apologies for that error message being in German. Basically, it's saying that the jar file is not signed, but we were trying to use as part of our little application. And it was just a hint here that there are some extra things you need to do. There's a very good document that I've highlighted here on OTN discussing the use of Java Web Start and extensions. This is what we had to add in our extensions.jnlp. There's a jarref, href, it's icon.jar. So there are a few little changes that we found we had to make. Not huge, but what I wanted to do was point out where we've had to make those changes. The standalone option certainly looked very, very interesting, so we had to try it out. As advertised, a bit of documentation there, and there's the URL. Now you can run that URL from Java, just start up that jar file, frm.sal, and there's a timeout option at the end there, 30,000 seconds or whatever it was, milliseconds I should say, and up pops your form. And we're almost going back to the days of having browserless, or we are going back to the days of having browserless environments. Now, it's definitely not going back to the client-server environment. When I speak to people about the differences, particularly if they're coming from client-server, you've got to think about the most important thing here was always network traffic. What's going up and down the line? Now, with client-server, all your processing was happening within the client, and there was just bits of data mostly going up and down the line. Now, as we went to the network options with the web browsers, we've not only got the data, but we've also got the image and the screen contents itself going up and down the line. So everything you can do to optimize that, the better. So as you move forward, think about what is happening across the network as you consider which deployment option you might be going for in the future. And if you've got any questions about that, get in touch. We're looking into this sort of thing all the time, so we'll be happy to discuss it with you. One thing I came across, I've now, for my sins, got a Microsoft Windows 10 laptop here, and as ever, I wanted to try out a bit of new technology, and we've got Microsoft Edge available on my machine here, as well as Internet Explorer. And I wanted to see what happened if we should start using Edge, because it certainly doesn't have support for the plugins. A strange thing, I really couldn't find how to run Microsoft Edge. If you see it on the desktop, you right mouse click on it, you look at the properties, you can't actually see what's being used to run it. Things have changed a lot in Windows 10. It was probably a few years ago these things changed. But, I just want to put a hint and tip here of how to fire up that web browser and how to call Web Start from your form servlet. So a couple of very simple tips there, should you be running your forms development on a Windows 10 client. That's the location in your base domain for your Weblogic server underneath the platform there. So Forms Web is buried deep, deep down. You can use the Fusion Middleware Enterprise Manager to manage these files, but being of old school, I still dive down to the individual files and edit them. So just an observation. Michael spoke about changing colours. Now, I think this was quite an interesting enhancement, and one which we use to really, it identifies the difference between your development, test, and production environments, so that people are very clearly can identify which platform they're running. So I don't know how many times I've asked one of our perhaps end users to test something, and they go and test things in the production environment, unfortunately. So if you can globally change all these colors, it's a great thing. So how do you do this? You don't have to go in and start setting visual attributes everywhere. You set it in your registry.dat, located in, I think it's the same place as your formsweb.config. And they're set like this. So in your formsweb.cfg, you set up a custom color scheme, PITS, our example, and then on the left-hand side here, you can see what colors we're setting them for. So this might be the development or the test or the production environment. Now, there's one unfortunate thing that happens here. The visual attributes and color setting within Forms overrides this. So we've cheekily used our own tool to go through and disable a lot of that color setting, so that these defaults in the registry.dat override what we would have been setting within Forms. And again, if you want some more details on that, do get in touch. So the upgrade of Pitstop itself, we now fully support Forms, so we can load Forms 12c into our repository and do things like search for for example, the WebUtil package, and replace it with the WebUtil no label if you're not using other bits of functionality and you don't require everything that's in the core WebUtil. You might have it scattered across 50 forms within 1,000, but where are they? That's what our tool will help you do. So lots of different ways of acting on forms that we discovered as we were using our own Forms application. It wasn't all plain sailing. The majority was, and I certainly concur with Michael that it was relatively straightforward. I think our development manager put on the bottom of this, and she was responsible for doing the upgrade and having her team do the upgrade here. Migration to Forms 12c, it's been a success, but it wasn't quite a simple recompile. We did hit a couple of bugs, and I think the great thing here, and this yet again reiterates the fact that Forms really is not dead. We're getting super support via Michael and the development teams. So in conjunction with Oracle, workarounds were found, bug fixing is being done. It's not been put on a box. Somebody's hammered the lid and Forms is dead. I really want to reiterate that. It's great stuff going on. And our tool now can support the loading of and running of Forms 10G R2, 11G or 12C environments. So that's quite an unusual thing for many Forms products to be running right across those different environments. But anyway, another endorsement of what's happening with Oracle Forms at the moment. It's a quick screenshot of what we do, hunting through a repository. I mean, there's two things here, where display and write sound file, that have been deprecated over time. We can go through all your forms, find out which have been, what of these you're still using. So within pits.com, the tool, there's intellectual property. We've put inside that the tools that learn. It's learned what is valid, what's invalid, and can suggest solutions for you. So if you're thinking about this migration, think about what obsolete built-ins are you still running? Is there a chunk of work to be done somewhere along the line? If you're one of the many customers we do have an install guide. And again, print it out, take it off as you do the upgrade, or give us a call and we can certainly give you some support as you do the migration to Pitstop 15.4. Right, coming towards the end here, which allows us quite a few minutes for some questions and answers. So if you've got some, please do type them in. If not, I'll get one of our technical guys to ask me some questions and see how we can progress. Many of you may have come across a recent video that Patrick Author, one of our consultancy manager, put together. He's just put another one together on the Forms 12c new features. It takes 3 minutes to run. It's very entertaining. I love the way it's been done. I think Patrick's doing a super job. And it really is from experience, and it's highlighting it. There's so much, as Michael has highlighted, there's so much within this release. It's not just sitting back and saying, we've got to go to 12c to be supported. There's so many new features, and as Michael was presenting there. So, what I'd like to do is to suggest a route with which you can get to 12c. Now, we're not a charity. We're out there trying to help the community, but obviously we've got a business here, and we would love to be engaged and help you migrate and upgrade to 12c. So if you're running on any version before 12c, and the majority of you are, please talk to us. You've done the first step, having a listen to Michael and myself today on the new features and why you should be going to the next version. If it all wasn't clear, and I'm sure there are perhaps many questions that have come out as we've been speaking, we're very, very happy to do a free one-on-one webinar. Not just myself, there's a whole team of people. One of the many reasons I joined PITS was that it's an organisation of technical folk. We talk technology all the time. Yes, we do have a few supporting staff, but everyone is engaged in technology and likes speaking to customers about what we're up to. We can do an upgrade analysis, look at the scale of the problem. If you're on the much earlier versions, there might be a chunk of work that needs doing. We can accurately define how much effort's going to be involved in an upgrade. So we can perform an upgrade analysis for you. We can allow you to try out 12c in a sandpit environment if you don't have these facilities yourself, in a virtual sandbox, and then help you out with an upgrade package using the tool. Not just the tool, perhaps you need assistance with the Weblogic server. Obviously, we've got a lot of experience there. We've got a lot of experience with the database if you're moving to 12c, the database as well. And we can offer training. Get in there, get your guys up to speed, and help you in the background as you move forward, perhaps yourself. Then, as Michael said, it may be a good opportunity to do some cleansing, whether it's just moving a few buttons around the screens to please a few users, or wholesale going through cleaning up the code. One embarrassment, I used to look after Oracle's Designer product, and we found that much of the designer-generated code has an awful lot of obsolete, unused code within it. So if you've got some designer-generated applications, give me a call. I'm sure we can help thin out your code. And then get to your 12c modern application. So there we go. We can help out. We're present, much like Michael, we're all around the world doing a lot of webinars and seminars, getting involved with user groups. I'll be presenting in London on the 27th of April, so any UK attendees would love to see you in London as part of the UK Oracle user group. A couple of other webinars going on, how to migrate your Oracle Forms to other technologies. The Irish user group, I think we'll be up for the Scottish user group as well, and then a discussion on Apex. Not to forget our friends over the water in the US and Canada. If you've not booked to go on the Rocky Mountain Oracle user group, and you've got the opportunity to go, I would. I've presented there on many occasions. It's a great place to go, Denver, and if you can squeeze in the weekend as well, I would definitely go up and, if you've not tried it before, do a bit of skiing. If you're a keen skier, you can get some great runs in up there. So I would thoroughly recommend having a go up there. And then we're going to do some other webinars based out of the US. So please join us in those. And obviously, we'd love feedback on what we've been doing today. Those are the contacts. On the sales side, Joel Bell in the Americas, and my good colleague Sasha Sander for anyone in the UK and other parts of the world. As I showed earlier, there's a lot of attendees from around the world. And then we've got my good self, Dee Brown at Pitstop.com. So I think we can go to some questions and answers. So have we got any questions? Let's have a look. Questions. Okay, we have a question here. Right, let's see if we can open up this box. Okay, it's quite a lengthy question here. Okay. Right. There's a question for Michael. Is there a documented list of the new features enhancements within 12c? A documented list, Michael.
What we've done is separated the runtime features from the design time features. So if you refer to the Forms Deployment Guide, you should be able to find, I will say many, but not all of the new runtime features listed in the deployment guide. Some of them are highlighted in the very beginning of that document. I believe it's chapter 2. However, other new features, which were a little bit more subtle, are just somewhat blended into the document. And similar would be true for design time. If you look in the Form Builder Help, you'll see there that there's I think it's titled What's New in Form Builder or something like that. You'll see some of the new features listed there. But same holds true as well for the more subtle changes. They've kind of just been blended in the locations where they would otherwise be expected to be. Having said that, some of the new features were not documented at all. I am in the process of authoring a more comprehensive new features white paper, which will be published on OTN hopefully in the next week or two, if I could get it finished. It should include nearly all of the new features along with an explanation of what those features are, what they do, how to use them. In cases where example code might make the feature more clear, I'm going to include some very simple example code. So again, that's kind of what the plan is right now. So to answer your question specifically, no, there is not an all-inclusive linear list of the new features, at least not yet. However, the more key new features are already documented.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question here. I think answered by one of my colleagues, but I think it's worth repeating because it's quite an important one. The question is, when will we have Jacob.jar signed? Buying security certificates for one file is not reasonable, but without it causes a lot of security issues. And I think, Michael, that's pretty much addressed by the WebUtil no OLE option. Am I correct?
Somewhat, right. So if your application does not use the OLE functionality, like, for example, to integrate with the Microsoft Office tools, then in version 12, you have the option of using the updated object group that's been delivered. For cases where you do need the OLE functionality, unfortunately, that is a third-party library. We, Oracle, are not permitted to redistribute it, and therefore we cannot take possession of it, sign it, and then redistribute it. So if you do need it, it is a design time choice to use it. So in that particular case, you would have to sign it. Fortunately, I don't know who asked the question, but if you've investigated it at all, the cost of obtaining a signing certificate is relatively cheap, inexpensive.
Right.
So it shouldn't be too great a deal. And the other nice thing about it is, as an organization, you own that certificate, so you're not paying per file. You're just paying for the digital signature for that that file. So whether you have one jar file or a million jar files, the same certificate is used. So there's no additional cost if later you decide maybe you want to package up icon or image files. Now that Forms 12 supports audio, you may want to package up audio files. Those would need to be in a signed jar file. So having obtained your own digital certificate or signature is probably going to be a good idea if you plan on doing any feature enhancements anyway.
Right. Thank you. This is an interesting one. We have around 500 forms running 11GR2 with an 11GR2 database. We've started moving some of them into ADF, but it's been harder than expected. Would you suggest moving to Forms 12C and running a hybrid between ADF and Forms? Oh, there's a contentious one for you. It depends which side of the fence you sit, I suppose. I mean, from Pitt's experience, we are seeing people running both. Michael, what would you both? Your thoughts would obviously be, you know, let's carry on with Forms.
Not necessarily. You'd be surprised. I mean, remember, I wear an Oracle hat, not necessarily
Absolutely.
a Forms hat. Yeah. So, I mean, the idea of moving to ADF or Apex or any other technology, it doesn't even have to be Oracle's, is, in my opinion, something that you have to look at from a very, very technical point of view and not necessarily a business point of view. And there's a reason for that. And I always use the same analogy. If I have a nail that I have to hammer into a board, I'm not going to get a screwdriver to do that job. I'm going to get a hammer. And that's kind of the scenario here. You have to understand what your application's purpose is, what features that application is required to have, what features that application might have desirably, in other words, optionally, and what the skill set is of the organization, and budget, of course, but I mean, skill set is also important. So, for example, if you don't have a single Java developer on your staff, moving to ADF probably is not going to be the wisest decision in the world. By the same token, if your application has requirements to do any kind of client-side functionality, then a web application like ADF is not going to be appropriate. For Forms, I could manipulate just about anything on the client machine. I could even log the user out of their workstation if I had to. You cannot do that from a web application. So you have to understand what the business requirements are and understand what the technical requirements are. So in answer to the hybrid part of this, the PITS actually has done some really good examples of showing how hybrid it makes sense, where the Forms application continues to evolve for data entry, but an ADF application is developed in harmony with the Forms application to do things like, for example, a calendar application or a scheduler application, or the other functionality that an ADF application may be very well suited for. So yes, hybrid definitely is a way to go if a new project warrants using a different tool. But I would not move from Forms to ADF simply because, gee, it seems like the cool thing to do.
Yes, I think it's one of those ones that you need to discuss with your the guy who's paying the money for the upgrade. It's yeah, get the business behind any decision. If there's business requirements, then that's the time to make the judgment. Perhaps time for a couple more quick questions. Does Forms Builder and 12C still use Reports Builder? Is Reports Builder still available? Yes, as far as I know, Reports Builder is still available, but you've made it a lot easier to integrate BI Publisher. I think I'm correct with that, Michael? You showed an example a little earlier of BI Publisher being called from, it was a drop-down pick list, wasn't it, within some attributes list. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I suspect sorry, go on.
Oh, I was going to say whether you decide to use BI Publisher or Oracle Reports 12, that's entirely your option. You could use one or the other or both at the same time from the same application. That's entirely up to designer's choice.
Cool. Okay, so we'll pick any last question. Okay. Conforms. Sorry, I'm just whizzing through. We've got a lot of questions, some of which have already been answered. Do we need to recompile forms and or reports if we migrate from 11.2 to 12C? The answer is obviously yes. So there we go. I think I'm going to leave that. Anyone who's entered a question, we will make every effort to get back to you with a reply if you've not had one already. My colleagues have been beavering away in the background, and I'll make sure Michael gets a copy of the questions as well if he's not already seen them. So lastly, to thank everyone for taking part. We've had a lot of questions here. We've had a huge attendance on this session. Really want to thank Michael for his time here. We really appreciate it. We're definitely on Michael's side. We're Oracle through and through. We love what's going on with Form. I wouldn't be here if Michael and the team were not doing the work on Forms and giving it a real breath of life, which is fantastic. So Michael, any last word?
Not really, but again, I do want to thank the guys at Pitts for inviting me. Like I said, this is it's always a good opportunity to bring the group together. I think we, the users of the Forms product, have a pretty unique community that we've created, probably because there's 20 or 30 years vested in it, whereas with other products and technologies, they're all very new. So we have a very unique and awesome family. So I want to make sure I keep that going.
Cool. Right, thank you very much, everyone. With that, I'm going to close the session. Thank you for attending. Goodbye.
Thank you.